We'll continue now talking about our big breaking story this morning, and the White House condemning North Korea after it says it successfully conducted an underground nuclear test. This morning, South Korea's official news agency reports the North also test-fired 3 short-range missiles. Last night's nuclear blast was reportedly more powerful than the country's first test back in 2006. In fact, Russia comparing the size of the latest explosion to the U.S. atomic bombs that hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. At this hour, allies, enemies, neighbors, all firing a barrage of criticism at Pyongyang over its test, and we're tapping into the global resources of CNN. Our Barbara Starr live at the Pentagon Force this morning. Emily Chang live in Beijing, China. Also, Jill Doherty live in Washington with reaction from the White House. We'll start with you, Barbara. The latest word from the Pentagon there, and it might take a little while at least to even confirm exactly what happened there.
TJ, that is exactly what we're hearing from senior U.S. military officials throughout the night, that it may be Wednesday before the U.S. military and the U.S. intelligence community can come to a final determination about what happened. This is the same site where North Korea previously tested a nuclear device. Seismic activity was detected, but there are a number of land-based sensors in the region. There are also Air Force assets that will fly overhead, taking air samples, analyze all this very complex data, and try to come to a final determination. Was it a nuclear device? And what size was it? Now, at this hour, the U.S. says it has no reason to doubt North Korea's claim, but they still want to go through this process and see exactly what they're dealing with. As for any U.S. military response, don't expect one. There are U.S. forces always in the region, but this is really now a diplomatic issue, we are told. Expect to see a lot of jawboning across the Pacific and at the United Nations. TJ?
All right, Barbara Starr for us from the Pentagon. Barbara, thank you so much this morning.
The nuclear test conducted by North Korea is likely to anger China, but getting the Chinese to back tough sanctions against the North could be challenging. We tap into the global resources again of CNN and head live to Beijing. Our Emily Chang is there right now. And Emily, is a neighbor and really possibly one of the only allies of North Korea, explain what type of delicate spot this puts China in.
Well, Kieran, a very delicate spot, and indeed just minutes ago we got the first official statement from the Chinese government in response to this reported nuclear test, and I will read a portion of it to you. It says the DPRK disregarded the opposition of the international community. The Chinese government expresses firm opposition to this. Upholding the peace and stability in Northeast Asia is in the mutual interest of all parties. China calls on all parties to keep calm, deal with the situation appropriately, and solve problems peacefully through discussion and dialogue. Now, other nations were very quick to condemn this reported nuclear test. China took several hours to release this statement, so we can assume it was carefully crafted, and that is because China is North Korea's closest allies, and some people say that this nuclear test is a major embarrassment to China, a huge foreign policy dilemma that could seriously undermine their relationship. Others say that China is privately very upset about this, but publicly not that surprised, and will urge the international community to maintain calm. Indeed, last month, when North Korea test-fired that rocket, China was the one that urged the international community not to overreact. It seems like they're trying to assume that role again this time around to get North Korea to come back to the bargaining table to try to solve this problem through dialogue. Kieran?
Emily Chang for us in Beijing this morning. Thank you.
And CNN's Jill Doherty following the reaction from the White House in Washington for us this morning. Jill, hello to you. Are they being measured in the response until we know more?
Well, they're measured, but they've been measured before. But I would say you can hear a sense of frustration in this statement by President Obama. Certainly, he's saying these actions, while not a surprise, given its statements and actions to date, are a matter of grave concern to all nations. And then he goes on in this print statement, by acting in blatant defiance of the United Nations Security Council, North Korea is directly and recklessly challenging the international community. And there is some frustration because, after all, just about 3 weeks ago, the administration was saying that it would be willing to go ahead with one-on-one talks with North Korea if it would bring them back to the six-party talks. So it didn't happen. The six-party talks really are dead in the water. And the U.S. was saying, look, we're going to do that not instead of six-party talks, but we'll go this extra step to make it happen. They also have a special envoy, Stephen Bosworth, who has been going around the region talking with members of the six-party talks, not directly with North Korea, but with everybody else, pushing to bring this back on track. And now this happens. So the next question is, what can they do? Obviously, they can go to the UN, they can have more sanctions, but they've already imposed sanctions. And the experts that we're talking with are saying that there is the internal component, what we've been reporting on from the region and from here. Kim Jong-il last year having a stroke, and now people looking at the succession and people behind the scenes jockeying and also trying to look as tough as they can on the North Korean side.
All right, Jill Doherty for us in Washington this morning following our breaking story. Jill, we thank you as always.
And last night's test is not North Korea's first act of nuclear activity. Here's more now in an AM Extra. The country actually conducted its first nuclear test back in 2006. A year later, it bowed to global pressure and agreed to close its main nuclear reactor in exchange for international aid. Last year, the North also destroyed a cooling tower that played a big role in its nuclear program. Just last month, however, the country revived international concern when it went ahead with a rocket launch. The North said it was simply trying to put a satellite into space. Critics, though, say it was cover for a long-range missile test.